We've all seen terrible movies, but what actually makes a movie bad? Is it the directing, the acting, the cinematography? Those things can definitely hurt a movie, but most of the time, the problem starts at the inception. It starts with the script. And while what makes a good script is subjective, there are fundamentals every screenplay needs. And if you don't understand the basics of structure, characters, and story, the chances of you writing a good script are,
no good.
So in today's video, we're gonna break down what makes a screenplay work, what makes it fail, using some of my favorite films and most hated films as examples. And that all starts with, we all know a story needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. But what does that actually mean? To keep things simple, Act 1 takes up roughly about 25%, Act 2 takes up 50%, and Act 3 takes up the final 25%. Act 1 is where you establish the tone of your movie, introduce characters, and define an end goal. It starts with the opening image. The first thing you show your audience has to set expectations for the entire story. A lot of the time, how you open a film will parallel how you end it, but we'll get to that later. Your opening image should also hook the audience, whether it's through beautiful cinematography or a crazy action sequence. And from there, you set up your main character and any other side characters that are going to be along for the ride. But by the end of Act 1, your character needs to want something or be pushed towards change. That change is specific to your film, but it always comes from a call to action or inciting incident. Something that forces your character to make a choice. And that choice shouldn't always be easy. It's that internal conflict that makes the beginning of the story more interesting. Do I put on the mask and become a hero, or do I take the easy route and stay the same? If you choose the normal life, there isn't much of an interesting story there. But if we decide to take the leap of faith, well, that moves us straight into... This is where most of the movie takes place, and where most scripts fall apart. In Act 2, your character has committed to the leap of faith, but they don't know exactly what they signed up for. They're in unfamiliar territory. They're learning the rules. They're dealing with the consequences of the choice they made at the end of Act 1. They're probably still a little naive too, which tends to lead into fun and games, and that often leads into a B story. A B story is a complementary journey for your character that runs alongside the main plot. It's often something like a love story, but it doesn't have to be. Ideally though, it does overlap with the A story during key moments, reinforcing your main character's arc, while also giving the final resolution more weight. Okay, now let's get back to Act 2 and where to take your character. I'll use Spider-Man as an example, and this pretty much works for any version of him, so just pick your favorite. At first, things seem manageable. Maybe the plan works. Maybe the character gets a small win, but that doesn't last. Halfway through Act 2, there has to be a turning point, a midpoint. Something big happens that changes how the character sees the problem. The stakes go up, the situation gets more serious, and going back to the old life is no longer an option. Think about Spider-Man before and after Uncle Ben dies. It's because of Uncle Ben's parting words that changes Peter Parker's life forever and why he continues to be Spider-Man. After the midpoint, things just start to fall apart in the story. The obstacles get harder, the mistakes get bigger, and the character's flaws become impossible to ignore. That pressure forces another choice. Do I stay down, or do I get back up again? At the end of Act 2, your character should be at their lowest point. In screenwriting terms, this is the all is lost moment, or dark night of the soul. The plan has failed, the goals feel out of reach, and it feels like the main character has made the wrong choice altogether. Aunt May's in the hospital, Green Goblin took MJ, and things have just gone from bad to worse for Spider-Man. And that's exactly where you want him, because that moment pushes us into... When your character ultimately chooses that they have to get back up and fight again, this is where our big climactic battle takes place. It's life, or it's death. It's to save the entire world. Okay, it doesn't have to be that dramatic, but it should feel that way for the characters, regardless of the stakes. Whether your characters are fighting to save the world, fighting for themselves, or fighting for love, you as the writer have to be able to resolve the main conflict by the end of Act 3, while also wrapping up your B story. I know this can be a little overwhelming, but let's take a look back at the end of Act 1. Your character already made a choice. The question is now, are they going to make the same choice or choose to be different? You see, you have to show that your main character has changed. Did they move on from their flaws, or did they choose to embrace them? Did they get the girl that they wanted, or did they learn something new about themselves in the process? Once you figure that out, you can start to write scenes that parallel that of the first act, to show how much your character has changed throughout the course of the movie. And there you go. You wrote a script. But is it any good?
No, probably not. Why?
A good movie doesn't just have a good story. It has characters that feel real and dialogue that feels unique to each of those characters. So now, let's go over what really makes your script come to life. And I mean, hey, if you watch this far, you might as well subscribe. Great directing can't save a shit story, good actors can't save bad dialogue, and beautiful cinematography doesn't matter if your audience doesn't care. So how do we make them? Well, it starts with writing good characters. Obviously, every character is going to fall into some type of archetype, and that's okay. You want your character to feel somewhat familiar, but you can push past that by incorporating flaws and quirks into the character. It's going to be those exact flaws and quirks that make your character more interesting to the audience and also more unique to yourself. I'm going to use Spider-Man again as an example. We all love Spider-Man. Yes, we all do, because no matter what he is up against, no matter the odds, he always gets back up. But why? I mean, yes, he's a hero and technically it is his job, but it comes from something deeper. Remember how I said that the Spider-Man after and before Uncle Ben's death are two different people? Well, that's because after Uncle Ben's death, Peter Parker feels like he has a responsibility to save people with his powers. Even when he doesn't want to, even when he wants to give up. It's almost like a punishment for himself because he still feels the guilt for not being able to save Uncle Ben. I would argue that that's what makes Spider-Man a great character. It doesn't matter if he wants to or needs to. If it'll help somebody, he will show up, because everybody gets one.
Apparently everybody gets one.
And the same could be said about Green Goblin. I mean, Norman Osborn doesn't want to be evil. The little goblin inside him makes him be the monster of the story. Conflict in the character is just as important as conflict in the story.
Don't forget it!
The last piece of the puzzle is what connects your story and characters together. The words that you write can make or break your film. Now, there's a lot of bad ways to do this. Your dialogue can come off as robotic, or honestly, just boring. The key is to find a nice rhythm between your characters in a scene. It should be like a dance or a duel, a constant push back and forth. The audience shouldn't know who's going to get the last word until the scene ends. When writing more dynamic banter, keep in mind that the majority of people talk over each other, so prioritize the pacing of the dialogue. Your characters should feel like their own person, and I know that sounds obvious, but every character is going to respond to a certain situation or another piece of dialogue differently. So if you can read a script with all the names blacked out and still have a sense of which characters are talking, that's a sign it's a good script. A lot of the time, less is more. You don't want your characters rehashing the same conversation or story points over and over again. So try to figure out some clever ways to talk about exposition. Or better yet, have it come through the story naturally or through the world that you're building. How do we do that, you might ask? Well, we do it through action lines are what you use to describe literally everything that's going on in a scene, from set pieces to action sequences and character movements. They might be the most controversial thing I talk about in this video, because theoretically, there is a wrong way to do it. If you ask one person, they might say an action line should be no longer than a sentence. Another person might say make them as long as you need. One thing to keep in mind is that you're not writing a book. You shouldn't have a whole page of action lines that's uncut. A good rule of thumb to get you started is think of each action line as a shot in your film. So you only want to describe the things you see in that shot, and then move on to another action line to describe another. You want your action lines to flow naturally, just like your dialogue, so that when you reread your script again, you don't get bogged down with any unnecessary information. Although there are rules to writing scripts, the most important thing is the structure. Your script has to at least look like a screenplay. Like I said in my last video, break the rules, and you might be interesting enough to stand out. Every type of story has already been told, but the thing that makes your story different is you. So go on, write your screenplays. I hope that after watching this video, it's at least 1% better. And if it is, consider subscribing. I'm trying to get monetized so I can buy more Blu-rays.